This is Petrol Rabbit or Purple Rabbit, depending on whether you've ever seen any of my Transformers or SWATer videos. You probably never have. I was trying to make a Simpsons quote, but just didn't come out right. So once you've settled and you've crewed up, what is the next step? You're going to notice quite quickly that you need to feed all these people. So how do you go on about making enough food? So the first thing you'll probably notice about kitchens, you have two tools to make food. First is the algae dispenser, which just takes water, but it has a lot of disadvantages. And then you have kitchens, so which takes all the available food ingredients in the game. So if you toggle about above any of your crew members under the conditions, you or status, let's see if we can find somebody who has, oh yeah, fatty acids deficiency. You can also have a protein deficiency, so lack of meat, etc. But basically what this means and how you counter it is that there are different foods that you can produce, and to then basically, as far as your crew has a diversified diet, they're not going to have a deficiency. The way you go on about this is to produce all the food available. So you need the meat, you must eat your vegetables. You also have fruits and seeds and nuts. So you want all of these. And fertilizer is the important ingredient, and of course water. So ice cube, etc. You want to keep by a water distillery so that ice is transformed into water as soon as you need it, and you want to keep water close by so it doesn't get they don't have to go and pick it up, in Kathmandu every time. And the other thing is you want fertilizer, and you want this fertilizer to be stored, ideally close by to the plants, and you want it to be produced to the plant, near the plant. So you have two ways of producing fertilizer. So the composter is a pretty important argument, and it brings us up to another argument right now. Why is that? Because you might and you can produce fertilizer with your chemical refinery, starting from raw materials, producing them. But the better use of this is actually to make explosive ammunition. And fertilizer can be produced in another way, which is with your compost, which, as I said, also produces water other than fertilizer. And coal, which is used, I think, in your CO2 producers. Is it overview? Yes, which helps your food production. Eventually, you're going to want to do all your fertilizers with composters via biomatter for a whole series of reasons. The first one is that biomatter is going to accumulate on your ship, and you're going to try and get rid of it, either by selling it or because it occupies space, and at the beginning, until you have enough space on your ship, it will sometimes basically make you go over the limit required to be able to space travel. So you don't want to accumulate too much biomatter. And the way you solve this problem is by not having only one composter, but by having many of them. And you set them, like everything, put it on continuous. So each one of these is continuously composting biomatter, as well as human meat, monster corpse, and human corpse. The reason of this is that each of these doesn't only give you one material in exchange, it gives you more of other needed materials. In this case, water and carbon, not specifically required, but carbon is more useful, for example, than raw chemicals. And while you only get 0.2 per biomatter, you're going to produce a lot during your whole match. So having these produce even in this quantity is going to help you, especially have a lot of them, and especially once you have a big crew. Another thing about this is you want to have your composters close to your food production, because they are your main means of producing fertilizer. So if they're far away, your fertilizer is going to take a long time to be stored close by to your plant production, which means more time is going to be lost in that process. Now, depending on how big you want your crew or your ship to be, your food production is going to vary accordingly. Now, and as far as you're having a population between below 20 or 30, even spread between two ships, you don't have to be too concerned about all of the problems that a bigger food management can bring you. But otherwise, the bigger your food production system is, the more you're going to have to make efficient all the other systems around it. And I'll explain. But so in this match, this is further, a couple of weeks further than the match you just saw. The crew in this game is at 134, specifically 71 on this big ship. So, and as you've seen, I've made a bigger food sector, etc. This, of course, has drains a lot of water to begin with. And just to be said, another thing about water, which you're going to need for your food production, is also needed for oxygen. So you have to keep stuffing your oxygen generators with water as well. And the bigger your crew is, the more you're going to have to consume water to produce oxygen. So you're gonna, the bigger your food production, the more you're going to need to keep pillaging and gathering water wherever and mining it wherever you can and whenever you can. Only resource you want to keep trading at the end of the game with the AI. You just keep buying all the water you find. You mine it, you buy it, you steal it, you pillage it, you make it from water collectors, you make it from composters, because composters also make some water. So you're trying to that is one of your main problems. Yeah, composters. So you want to be transforming as much compost as you can into fertilizer and water. So the composter is good all around. Now, the important thing is how you calibrate the composter, and the problem here is what the algae dispenser does. If you integrate with an algae dispenser to make a ready meal will take water and biomatter. So the higher your population and the more water you'll be draining all over. So if you have a very big food production, you're going to have to keep giving it water and fertilizer. Now, if you notice that you're accumulating too much fertilizer, then at that point you can sort of slow it down and maybe let some algae dispensers cash in on the biomatter instead of the composters. But be warned that this is going to consume more water, so it will resolve your starvation problems if they're not too big. But when you do it, you need to have a strong water supply, and it's going to dry it, so you're going to have to keep it up or increase it, basically. And I don't suggest too much, especially if you're planning on growing even further your population. You should avoid algae dispensers, not altogether, because they're an important source of integrating your feeding your population. But be careful of how much water it drains away from you. But if you're not producing enough fertilizers, and there is moments in your game in your population growth where you will be consuming all your fertilizer, if you don't have any biomatter available, this means that your algae dispensers won't be able to produce food as well. So that can go and intercede. Besides, if you are also consuming water other than with oxygen and food production, it might, if that is the problem you're having in your game at the moment, it might be a good idea to turn off your algae dispensers. Now, if your population is starving, there can be two answers to it. One, of course, is the lack of enough food, but the other can be you're low on the dispensers, and so your people, your crew is not going to be able to go and pick up their food. They're going to have to stay too much in queue before they get their food, or maybe they can skip their lunch break, so they never eat for a day or two, and that goes on, etc. So before you go and look into producing more food, if you're having problems of starvation, look at if you have enough places to distribute your food correctly. Now, to give you an example, this is my prison ship, and the prisoners only have access to a kitchen and a water and an algae dispenser. So as you see, they're always congregating into the kitchen, and they're trying to get food from the kitchen, which is empty. We have prisoner complaints 27, no access path to a kitchen has no food. So there's probably a bit more than 28, somewhere around 30 or 40. If I speed it up, you should be able to see how they're all going towards the kitchen and waiting their turn somehow at some point to get some food. Now they're prisoners, so they don't have anything else to do, and they can just stick there. But your crew doesn't. And they have specific windows for this, so take action on that. And yeah, they broke a kitchen already. So before you go and solve your food issues by producing even more food, which is going to make you consume even more water, check out maybe that. But however, if that is not the problem, just to hover over your kitchen, see what is missing, and then you can go back to your food producers and choose to replace. Like if you have too much vegetables, you can just replace it with something else. Yes, keeping it simple without using complicated words. If it's all four, it's basically because they're using it right away. But as your population grows, you're going to start noticing starvation when you get to the limit of your food production. And at that point is when you want to sort of integrate a bit with algae dispenser, unless you want to boost even further the population. The bigger your crew becomes, the more efficient all your systems are going to have to become. Namely, first of all, you're going to have to take care a bit of your oxygen distribution. And kitchens and especially sleeping areas can become dense O2 consuming places, basically. Places, areas, whatever. Which brings us to your next phase in the game. So once you've populated up, crewed up your ship, and started producing enough food for them all, you're going to notice that producing all of this food is going to consume a lot of energy. And this brings us to the energy crisis. Blackouts all over your ship, and that's when you need to go into your energy production. And not only how much energy you produce, but how you distribute it throughout your system. So that's the topic of the next video.